One of the reasons why I love retro gaming is that it takes me back to a simpler time. A time when you could pick up and play most games and begin having fun right away. It's like an instant hit, and the problem these days is that with modern gaming there's just so much storyline and complex controls that I just haven't got the time to invest in them. And that's perhaps why I enjoy so many classic arcade games, as they were intended for short bursts rather than hours upon hours of gameplay. One of which was Paperboy, a simple game in its execution. It was fun to try and master, and no matter how long it had been since you last played it, you could always pick it up and get back into the swing of things within a matter of minutes. During the N64 lifespan, Midway were perhaps the publisher that really pushed out ports from arcade games like no other. So when I heard that they were releasing a new Paperboy game, I was honestly expecting perhaps a high resolution update, much in the same vein as their other retro updates. To my surprise, the development of the game was shipped out to High Voltage, who took the basic Paperboy formula and revamped it for the year 2000. I've talked before about how by this point the console had a solid library of games that push the system, but if there's one thing that will hit you as soon as you begin playing this, it's just how ugly the game is. Sure, graphics are not the be all and end all, but the ugly graphics here are more of a design choice than being the work of art from a new team of artists. I can see that they intended this game to have a distinctive look, but it just doesn't work here. Everything looks so sharp and blocky, and things that should have smoothed curved edges have really jagged and pointy sides, which makes you feel like you're playing a game from inside the mind of a hippie having an acid trip rather than a game from the year 2000. But graphics aside, the gameplay itself doesn't live up to expectation. You have a practice mode to learn the basics, but this is timed, so you never quite have enough time to get to grips with how the game plays. So when you do jump into the single player mode with no backstory or context to what you are doing, then you begin pedaling down the road throwing newspapers at the houses you've been asked to deliver on the map. There are 3 difficulties which reduce your time the tougher you want to play, and also add additional targets you need to realise to complete the level. And the levels themselves are actually a nice mix of locations and areas. That's perhaps one of the game's strong points, is that one minute you can be riding through the hood and the next you'll be in a haunted street. Seemingly out of nowhere though, you will unlock boss levels. These are a nice addition and give you another aim when playing the game, but again these can involve a lot of trial and error to figure out exactly what you need to do to take down the boss. These are also introduced by some cutscenes which are terrible. They have some of the most muffled audio sound bites I've heard on the console, and the writing is the bare minimum you'd expect to explain why you're suddenly having to attack a giant gorilla in a pen. These boss levels break up the monotony of the game, which sadly kicks in pretty quickly. The gameplay, no matter how you want to look at it, only really involves throwing newspapers. The developers included some side additions like the ability to hit other objects, use power-ups, and to get tokens, but these modes are more like side quests rather than core gameplay. And if you do collect enough tokens, you will also unlock bonus levels where you are able to do stunts, for example. But like many of the other levels in the game, these are poorly designed. What also doesn't help the gameplay is that the camera locks onto your view to one side of your character. So this makes delivering newspapers on both sides of the road a real chore unless you're willing to make multiple passes around the same area waiting for the camera to switch view. Whether you play as the Paperboy or the Paper Girl, the gameplay remains unaltered, aside from some sound bites which do change and are unique to each character. But with the music scores and audio quality being so low, it's really a game you'll most likely want to turn the volume down to play to avoid the irritation to your eardrums. And rounding off the poor experience for me was the fiddly controls. Your character continues to move forwards at all times unless you hold the brake button. The analog stick should have made this game a breeze to play and aim with, but when combined with the terrible camera it becomes more frustrating than fun. This really isn't a game which I'd recommend picking up in a hurry. The original Paperboy removes all of the layers of crap that the developer added to this game, and in an attempt to make the game appeal to new audience of the time, they have taken away the best parts of the original and left us with a game that won't appeal to fans of the original arcade hit and has little to offer newcomers to the Paperboy experience. I was surprised to see some of the positive reviews this game received. IGN, of all places, awarded this a score of 8, which is far too high in my opinion, but perhaps some of you out there will agree with this. And so for today's topic of conversation, I want to know what retro classics which have been rebooted do you think ruined everything that you love so much with the original game? And as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And until next time.